Okay, good morning, people. Today we're going to talk about addition using absolute value. Um, Basically, more of the same stuff that we've been doing, but we're going to incorporate how absolute value looks, okay? First, we're going to do an example. There are a couple examples where we're adding numbers that have the same sign. So when I say same sign, what I mean is that we're adding two positive numbers together. So a positive and a positive, or we're adding two negative numbers together. So a negative and a negative. Okay, the first example that we're going to do is 3 plus 5. So we're going to draw a number line. And I know that what I'm adding is positive numbers, and so my answer is probably going to be positive, so my number line is going to have mostly positive numbers, but it's still good to show that there are negative numbers because the number line will continue on forever in both directions. So first we're going to start at 0. Oops. Instead of -1, we're actually going to start at 0, and we're going to go to the right 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to continue from there. Continue from 3, 5, because we're doing 3 plus 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our answer is 8, because that's where the last arrow ends up at. It ends up at 8. Now, if we were to draw an arrow that represents the sum that we get, it would go from 0 to 8. So I'm going to draw it underneath. That arrow is the combined length of 3 and 5. It seems kind of obvious because 3 plus 5 is 8, but it's good to just say it out loud anyway. So our first arrow is worth 3 units, our second arrow is worth 5 units, and then the combined arrow together is 8 units. So again, the length is determined by the absolute value of 8. The absolute value of 8 is just 8, but we write it like this with the 2 bars on either side of the 8. So the absolute value of 8 is 8. The direction that the arrow goes determines if it's positive or negative. In this case, it goes to the right. So that means that it's positive. We don't write plus 8 to show that it's positive 8. We just write it as regular 8, just a normal 8. The next example that I'm going to do, so in the first one we did 3 plus 5. Here we're going to do -3 plus -5. So again, the first thing that we do is we're going to draw a number line. And here I'm combining two negative numbers. So most of my arrows are going to go to the left. So I'm going to put the 0 off to the right side. So the first number that we have is -3, so with everything else, we start at 0, we go to the left 1, 2, 3, because it's negative, we're going to go to the left, and then -5, we start where we left off, and we go to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we draw our arrow, we end up at -8. The first arrow is length 3, the next arrow is length 5. If we were going to draw a combined arrow, an arrow that combines the lengths, it would be length of 8 units. And because it's pointing to the left, that means that it's negative. So our answer is going to be -8. So the length of the combined arrow is the absolute value of -8. And we show that by putting the bars around the outside of the 8. So the absolute value of -8 is 8. Now the direction, and this video cuts it off a little bit, but the screen will move up in just a second. The direction of this goes to the left, which shows that it is a negative number. And with negative numbers, we have to put the negative sign. Positive numbers, we don't. Negative numbers, we have to put the negative sign. Okay, so now we have a rule. I'm going to put a star next to it. The rule that we have is when we add numbers, or anytime you're adding numbers with the same sign, it'd be nice if I spelled with correctly. So with the same sign, and when I mean same sign, I mean they're both positive or they're both negative. So when we're adding numbers with the same sign, you add the absolute values of each number, then you use the common sign for the answer. So you add the absolute values of the numbers, and then you label it with the sign that they're the same. So if they're both positive, then you label it positive, but you don't need to label something positive. But if they're both negative, you add the absolute value of each, and then label it with the negative sign. So in the examples that we did above, we did 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. So if we were to break this down, we're going to take the absolute value of 3, which is just 3, and the absolute value of 5, which is 5, and we're going to say 3 plus 5 equals 8. So 3 plus 5 equals 8. Both of the 3 and the 5 are positive, so our answer is going to be positive, but again, we don't need to label it as positive. In the second example, in B above, we had -3 plus -5. So we are going to do the same. We're going to take the absolute value of -3, which is 3. Then we're going to take the absolute value of -5, which is 5. And like we did above, we're going to do 3 plus 5. We know that's equal to 8. Both of the numbers that we started with were negative, which means that our answer is going to be negative. So instead of 8, it's going to be -8. That is our answer. Okay, so I went to another page, but you can go to stay on the same page if you have space underneath. We're going to talk about adding numbers with opposite signs now. Adding numbers with opposite signs. Before we did both positive or both negative. Now I mean we're gonna add positive and then negative, or negative and positive. Either way, the numbers that are added together have different signs. Okay, let's look at this example. 5 plus -3. So let's do this on a number line. Okay, 5 plus -3 on a number line. I'm going to draw our number line. If you have a ruler, use your ruler, keep it nice and neat. I'm going to put 0 right in the middle because I have a positive and a negative number. I don't know if it's going to go to one side or not. You could probably guess. But just to be simple, I'm going to keep it nice and even on both sides. So +5 on one side, -5 on the other side. Now my first line that I'm going to draw, I'm going to start at 0. My first number is 5, so I'm going to go to the right 5. Let's try again. Go to the right 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to stop here. And then I'm going to start where that arrow ended up, and I'm going to go back to the left, 3. Okay, try to keep your lines nice and even. I ended up at 2. Okay, so 5 plus -3 is equal to 2. Okay, let's look at another example. The next example we're going to do is going to be 4 plus -7. So again, we're going to draw a number line. It's nice and even. We'll put 0 somewhere in the middle. We'll count up to the right positively. We'll go to 6. And to the left, we're going to count down -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. That's all I have room for. Okay, so our first number here is 4. So we start at 0, and we're going to go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our second number is -7. So we're going to start where we left off that arrow, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because the 7 tells us how far to go, and the negative tells us the direction. We ended up at -3. So we also have a rule for when we're adding rational numbers that have opposite signs. So before we did rational numbers that have the same sign, positive and positive, or negative and negative. And now we just did adding numbers with opposite signs, so positive and negative signs. So I'm going to write this rule out. I'm going to let you copy it, and then I'm going to explain it. Okay, so when we're adding rational numbers with opposite signs, we do that by subtracting the absolute value and then using the sign of the larger number. So it doesn't matter what order we subtract the numbers in, as long as we use the sign, and when I say sign, I mean positive or negative, of the larger number. So for example, in the examples above, the first one that we did, we had 5 plus negative 3. 5 plus negative 3. So we took the absolute value of 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. Then the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Oops, that's not right. It should be 3. I added a negative there. It should be 5 minus 3 is equal to 2. So I made a mistake. Instead of absolute value of 3 equals 3, I did negative 3. It should just be 3. But anyway, we're going to take the sign of the larger number. The larger number is 5, so our answer is just 2. It is positive. We don't have to write the plus sign for positive numbers. Okay? The second example that we did, we had 4 plus negative 7. We're going to take the absolute value of 4. That's just 4. Then we're going to take the absolute value of negative 7, which is just 7. Then we're going to do 7 minus 4. Doesn't matter what order we put these in. 7 minus 4 is 3. And negative 7 is the larger number, so we're going to go with negative 3 as our answer.